One of the hottest topics that has been in the news for several months now has been inflation and how just the rising cost of everything has gone up across the country. So I figured today we should take some time and dive into, is it affordable still to buy a home here in Myrtle Beach? Can I afford to actually make the move to Myrtle Beach and enjoy living that close to the ocean? So we're going to talk about costs. We're going to talk about costs of a house. We're going to talk about the cost of your property taxes and just vehicle taxes and all that stuff. We're going to discuss things like utilities, what to expect for expenses living here in the Myrtle Beach area. So let's take a couple minutes. Let's dive into this topic, and hopefully it's going to help you to realize Myrtle Beach still is an option where you can move, and we still are an affordable place to live. So let's jump into this. What's happening, guys? It's Jeremy Blanton with RE/MAX Southern Shores. And like I said, today we're going to discuss the cost of living here in Myrtle Beach. Is it affordable anymore? Can you afford to make the move to Myrtle Beach? Now, over the last several years, we have seen an increase in property values here in the Myrtle Beach area, but the same has happened basically across the country. When COVID hit, prices on everything just started to go up exponentially, and the housing market is one of those areas where it hit the most. So when I go and look at the average cost of living here in Myrtle Beach versus other places around the country, it really makes it clear to me that we still are an affordable place to live. So I first decided the number one thing we need to talk about, obviously, is housing prices. What does it cost to buy here in Myrtle Beach versus other areas around the country? So I went to handy ChatGPT, a wonderful AI, and asked it, what is the average cost of a home in New York and what's the average cost of a home in Los Angeles? And it gave me some staggering numbers. Now, to get my answer for here in Myrtle Beach, I went directly to our MLS where I could get statistical data, and that brought us in right around the $370,000 mark for a single family home. Now, in New York, for example, that number was coming in over 800,000, and in Los Angeles, that same number was coming in over $1 million. So the cost of buying a home here in Myrtle Beach versus places like New York and Los Angeles and so many other places across the country is just significantly more affordable. I've helped people move here. In fact, I have one I just helped purchase a home last week that they were coming from California. They sold their home over there. That was 1959. It was 1,100 square feet. They bought a brand new home here in Myrtle Beach, close to 2,000 square feet in size. That was beautiful, all on one floor, 3 bedrooms, 2 bath, had a nice private backyard in a nice development with amenities in Carolina Forest for under $400,000. So finding a home here can be done in that $400,000 mark, and you can get great properties. In comparison, someone who might be moving here, like my clients that came from Oregon a few years back, they were moving here. They sold their home in Bend, Oregon for $925,000. The house was built in the 1950s. It was 1,100 square feet. It was a true 2-bedroom, 2-bath house, and they took the garage and converted it for the 3rd bedroom for their child to have a place. They sold that home over there, moved here to Myrtle Beach, moved into Waterway Palms, into a gorgeous, beautiful, custom-built home that was close to 4,000 square feet, beautiful amenities in the community, all the high-end fixtures inside and finishes done to the home. Great home. They had their home office to work from. They had more than enough space for their children to spread out, and they were able to buy this house for $875,000, and it was brand new versus the home that they had from the 1950s. This happens so much here in our area where people are selling their homes that they have in places like New Jersey and New York and California and Oregon, moving here, selling that house from the 50s and 60s, buying something brand new, having warranties, having all kinds of great new upgrades and updates in the home right here in Myrtle Beach. So if you're thinking about making the move to the area, the cost of the home prices itself is usually going to be significantly less. I think right now about my clients that are moving here from New York State. They're selling their business, they're selling their home, and they're moving here. The business and the home combined that they're selling is going to probably net right around $575,000 to $600,000. So when they're said and done, they're moving here and they're buying a home basically for the same price. So right around that $600,000 mark. But the difference is that the home they had up there was from the 1930s. It's a small ranch home, like 11 to 1,200 square feet, no garage, no nothing. And they're moving here and they are buying a massive, huge home in one of of Carolina Forest's premier neighborhoods where they're getting brand new construction, 6 bedrooms, 4.5 baths, a 3-car garage, a huge half-acre lot on a cul-de-sac for basically the same price. This is the story that I hear over and over with my clients who are moving here. So when we talk about cost of the home, it's definitely going to be much more affordable here in Myrtle Beach. Next, let's talk about the utilities to run that house. You know, people that are moving here a lot of times want to know, what can I expect for an average utility bill? What can I expect for my costs to be on? And when I talk to some people from other parts of the country, they're spending $150, $250 a month for just a water and sewer bill. They're then spending $400 to $500 a month in an electric bill. They also then have their, internet and cable and all of those other utilities that they need for day-to-day living, that they have those expenses, and they're easily spending anywhere from $1,000 to $1,500 a month in utilities. So let's talk about what costs are here. And so to give you kind of an idea on utilities, I'm going to use my investment property. It's a 4-bedroom, 3-bath home, mainly all on one floor with a nice room above the garage with a full bath. The home sits right around 2,200 heated square feet. It's an all-electric home. When we lived in that and used it as our residence, our electric bill averaged usually right around the $130 to $140 a month bill. So we were spending $150, we'll say at max, per month for electric. Our water bill was usually $50 to $60. Now, I need to stop a second and say this as well. I also have 3 teenagers, 2 teenage girls. So you guys can imagine the water bill is going to be a little bit higher than most of you out there, because I have teenage girls that get in the shower and forget that they're in there for 20 to 30 minutes. Luckily, the water heater finally runs out of hot water and they finally shut it off and get out. But on average, I'm looking at about a water bill of about $40 to $50 a month for my house. So if you add those two together, I'm looking at about $200 to maybe $250 a month for those electric and water. Now, in my development where that investment property sits, the HOA, which is $100 a month, gives us cable and internet included in that monthly fee. But if I didn't, I might spend another $75 to $100 a month for cable and internet expenses. Now, in comparison to other places of the country, that seems to be pretty affordable. I know a lot of people that I talk to say, my electric bill's running in the several hundreds, my water bill's well over $100 each month, and the utilities for, internet and cable, well, that's a whole other story we don't even want to get into. But like I said, they're spending $1,000 to $1,200, maybe $1,500 a month for utilities. Down here, all in, you can expect to probably have, for a typical home, maybe $300 to $450 a month for your utility bills. So once again, another way that you can save money and have an affordable home here in the Myrtle Beach area. Also, a lot of our homes in our area are built a little bit newer than some of those homes that we talked about earlier. My clients moving into the houses from the 50s and 60s. Well, those homes back then didn't have the same kind of technology for insulation and for the heating and cooling systems. And so they don't run quite as efficient as newer construction things now. So those things also are going to help immensely in your monthly utility bills. All right, the next thing that we need to talk about is we need to discuss the taxes and property taxes here in Myrtle Beach. South Carolina is known as one of the most affordable states in the country for property taxes. I can tell you that on a house, if you have a primary residence and your home value is right around $500,000, you can expect your annual property tax bill to be right around the $2,000 mark. Now, in comparison to other places, and I have people moving here from New York and New Jersey a lot, and when they're moving here, I always ask them it this way: how much are you paying per month for your property taxes? And they usually tell me $800, $1,200, $1,500, $2,000 a month. And when I can tell them that when you're paying right now $2,000 a month, that can be your bill for the entire year, usually this is what happens. Are you serious? That's it? Yes. Property taxes here can be extremely affordable. Now, if the home is not used as your primary residence and you're using it either as an investment or a second home or something like that, do expect that bill to be a lot higher. Usually it's about 3 times the cost of if it was your primary residence. So in those situations, yes, that bill's going to become a little bit higher. But if it is your primary residence, you can expect it to be very affordable each and every year. In addition to that, if you're someone who is retired and moving to the area, once you've reached a certain age, you can then get the homestead exemption here in Myrtle Beach, which is going to remove up to $50,000 off of the assessed property value of your home. That's going to save you a couple $100 more each and every month. So it's another great way that you can save some money. But like I said, in order to qualify for that, you have to make it your primary residence, you have to be over a certain age, and you have to live in the house for at least one full calendar year in order to qualify. Now, I know somebody who's watching right now is thinking, but Jeremy, you have to pay vehicle taxes there in Myrtle Beach, and that's just so ridiculous. I don't have to pay that here. Well, you're right. In several states, you don't pay an annual vehicle tax. And here in South Carolina, yes, you're going to pay that each and every year. But if I take the cost of what I have to pay each year for both of my vehicles plus my primary residence and I add them together, I'm still under $3,000 a year in my annual expenses for taxes. That still is significantly less than other parts of the country. So if you're someone who says, hey, I'm looking for a way to save some money on my taxes, you might want to consider South Carolina as an option. You know what? I want to go back one second. While we're on the subject of taxes, let's discuss the other complaint that I hear. Jeremy, the sales tax in your area is so expensive. Why is it so high? Well, here in Myrtle Beach specifically, we are a major tourist town. We have millions and millions of visitors who come to our beach every year, and they're here on vacation. When they come, they have budgeted time, they've budgeted money to spend while they're on vacation. They are not going to be necessarily at home cooking, doing all that kind of stuff, but instead they're going to be out eating. They're going to be out dining at some of our famous restaurants around the beach. They're going to be spending time shopping at our outlets and at places like Broadway at the beach and Barefoot Landing. They're going to be spending a lot of time out and about and spending their money while they're here in Myrtle Beach. So one of the things that we have learned here in Horry County is why not allow those millions of visitors to spend their money and put a little bit more towards the road maintenance and expansions and all the projects that we need to have to increase our infrastructure here in the Myrtle Beach area. So when we go out to eat, if we're going to, a McDonald's or Taco Bell or wherever to grab something, there's going to be a 1 cent additional tax on top of the sales tax that the state has in place already. Why is that? For every dollar that I spend, there's that additional 1% that is going into that road fund, let's just call it, to make things easy. Here in Myrtle Beach, they call it riding on a penny, and it's basically going to be in place for the next many, many years. And what it does is that it's bringing in millions of dollars each and every year from the millions of visitors that visit our area to help fund all of those projects. Personally, as someone who lives here as a local, I'd rather have to spend that extra penny on each dollar I spend while I'm out than have to pay it out of my, vehicle tax or property taxes each and every year, or just have an additional tax bill that shows up. So these are the things that are much more affordable in my mind to save me as someone who lives here and let those that are visiting help to fund all the projects that need to take place. So obviously I don't go out to eat every day. We might go out once a week and grab something as a family to eat. And so if I have to pay a little bit extra during that time, I'm okay with it because it helps me to keep my annual expenses down significantly. All right, the next thing that I want to talk about are just some day-to-day living things that you might run into here in Myrtle Beach, and how does it compare to other places around the country? One of those things that I use a bunch as a realtor is obviously I'm driving all around the beach. I sell property everywhere from up at the North Carolina border all the way down into Georgetown and out west all the way out past Aner. So I'm sometimes driving 75 to 100 miles in a day's time. And with that, I'm spending a lot of money on fuel. Well, how does it compare here, fuel prices versus other places around the country? I filled up my gas tank the other day across the street from my office at Murphy Express. By the way, if you have a Murphy Express near you, it's part of the Walmart chain. Get your Walmart Plus membership. Save that 10 cents a gallon. It really pays off, especially for someone like me who does a lot of driving. I use it religiously, and it saves me a ton. So I filled up across the street. My expenses were $2.55 for me to fill up my car that day per gallon. In comparison, if I went to get gas in like New York, I can expect that to be close to $4.80, or if I was in California, close to $5.50 for a gallon of gas. That is significantly higher than here. California is more than double for the same fuel that I would need to do things here. So it's going to save you a ton of money on that. In addition, groceries here in our area are usually going to be a little bit more affordable than other places around the country. We now have some chains that have come into our area that have made things even more affordable. Having places like Aldi to go shop or Food Lion, those grocery stores are going to be a little bit more affordable. And I hate to say it, but Walmart even can get the necessities that I need for day-to-day living at a much more affordable price than in other grocery chains and other places around the country. So it's once again another way where Myrtle Beach just ranks a little bit ahead of everywhere else on costs. So if you're thinking about moving here, something you definitely want to take in consideration is how you can start to save some money on things like your day-to-day livings as well. Now, the other part that you need to take in consideration with that as well, though, is if you're someone that is going to need to find employment when you get here, the wages and salaries are going to be less here versus other places around the country. We are definitely not going to be on the high end of salaries, but we're also going to be on the low end of costs for living in our area. So it's all kind of relative. So while a teacher may make $100,000 up near Philadelphia, down here it's going to be significantly less. But like I said, your costs of living here are also going to go down as well. So anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, do me a favor, give it a thumbs up, get that bell on, and I'll catch you in the next one. See ya.